Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get into, including Steeler moves, Le'Veon Bell, Pitt, Penn State, who's to blame for the Pirate fiasco. We'll get into all these topics and more. The #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers as they get ready for the Cleveland Browns. And here is your panel. Left to right on your television screen, we have Paul Zeise of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Paul Zeise program. Over on the left of 93.7 The Fan. In the middle, it's Mr. Will Graves from the Associated Press. And to the right, formerly of Starkey Mueller, now of the PM team, that is Pony Mueller, which begins on Tuesday on 93.7 The Fan. It's Chris Mueller. So we'll get right into this, gentlemen. We'll start about what was I didn't think much of a controversial issue, but apparently to some it was. Landry Jones loses his job. Essentially, Josh Dobbs beats him out for that job. Paul Zeise, when I look at that, it made sense to me. And based on how Dobbs has gone from the beginning of last year to where he is this year, I think it was a total body of work, and they felt that the upside was too good to pass up. Do you agree with that decision?
I think it's hilarious. The guy went crazy against fourth stringers the other night, and now we've got people talking about how he's going to replace Ben Roethlisberger and how he's the second coming of Michael Vick. Look, the Steelers made a very, what I would say, gutsy move here. I don't know that it was the smart move. To me, if you're a team that's looking to win the Super Bowl right now, you want the guy that right now gives you the best chance to win if Ben Roethlisberger goes down. And to me, it's still Landry Jones. I don't care about Josh Dobbs' potential because the bottom line is I don't think he's going to be a star in this league.
But who's to say he can't win if you got a one-game opportunity?
Well,
Landry
had proven he can win those one-game opportunities.
But Landry has proven that. Landry's already proven that. You don't. Why take a roll of the dice when you've got somebody who has proven he can do that?
Proven he can do what, Paul? Beat the Browns twice and have Martavis Bryant make him look really good against the Arizona
Cardinals. What about the Kansas City game? What about the Chiefs game? What about the Chiefs game?
They lost.
No, they won that game.
He came in and started against the Chiefs and lost.
No. The game he didn't start. Michael Vick started.
Oh, congratulations. Good for Landry Jones.
I'm just saying he's proven that he can.
Who picked him up today, Paul?
What?
Who traded for him? Who was willing to allocate any kind of resource to acquire him? He stinks.
Well, maybe he does.
Look, I'm firmly.
He's a game manager and has proven he can win games.
I have firmly been on the Landry train. I tweeted out during the game, there's no way in hell they're getting cut in Landry for two guys with 0 regular season snaps. A tweet that was brought back to me yesterday at about 4 o'clock by a lot of people. I appreciate you guys reaching out. Look, I think Landry, I'm going to go even further than Paul. I think Landry is maybe in the 28 to 32 range. Are there 32 quarterbacks going to start on next Sunday better than Landry Jones? I say no. For 1 or 2 games. People are going to say, well, if Ben goes down for 5 or 6 games, the team is screwed no matter who's the quarterback. So does it matter? But if you're talking about 1 or 2 games, Landry has shown that he can win 1 or 2 games. And I think that's fine. If Ben goes down 6, they're screwed anyway, so it doesn't matter who the backup quarterback is.
And here's the other part of it. You've already got Mason Rudolph. So what, you need 2 basically rookie quarterbacks with potential? Come on.
I mean, the interesting thing here is like
pick one or the other. If you think Dobbs is better than Rudolph, cut Rudolph.
Friends know how to identify the signs of LJDS. Don't let your friends be caught with Landry Jones derangement syndrome, thinking that this matters.
There's not one person.
Are you going to let me talk, Paul, or should you just shout?
He's a great player. Not one person.
Will's saying he's as good as he's better than some starters.
He's better than Nate Peterman. I mean,
there's some really bad starters in the NFL.
I don't know about that.
The point here is, I was actually on the keep Landry around in case of emergency train and thought about it, and changed my mind when I saw the actual outcry when he was cut, as if it's some guarantee that he would have been better than Joshua Dobbs, who, yes, did what he did against 4th stringers against vanilla coverages, but still showed a basic playmaking ability that I certainly think could work in a pinch. It's not like Josh Dobbs doesn't know the offense. He's probably the smartest guy on the team, and he's got better physical tools than Landry Jones. If Ben Roethlisberger goes down for more than a game or 2 anyway, this season's kaput. So it doesn't even matter.
That's not true, though. He went down for 4 games and the season wasn't kaput. And a big reason, because they had Landry Jones. And Michael Vick won one of the games, but Landry Jones helped them. That's the bottom line.
I don't know.
They've got a guy who has proven he can do it.
They're also in a situation where they evaluate. That's what they do. And they looked a lot at what happened last year to this year. One thing I was encouraged by, and I wanted to see it, Josh Dobbs, when he was in the pocket about to be hit by two guys, over 300 pounds, stood in there, looked downfield, made plays.
Two guys about to be cut.
Okay, doesn't matter. When you're coming in and you still have to make the throw. How about the Mason Rudolph throw?
He deserves credit for the progress that he's made. This is not a diss of Josh Dobbs.
Yes, it is. You're saying he can't handle one game.
There's some subplots here that we're not talking about. Ben didn't exactly reach across the aisle and extend a big welcome to Mason. And now he doesn't have Landry to say, hey, Landry, go teach the kid the offense. Now Ben's got to teach this kid the offense.
He doesn't have to do anything. He has to go out and win football games. That's his job.
Josh Dobbs is the backup?
I think Mason's the backup.
I'm just saying, why everyone's just acting like Josh Dobbs is the backup?
Josh Dobbs should be the backup. He's more prepared to be the backup. I would start if I had to play him.
Potential and pedigree. I would say Josh Dobbs. You got to go with Mason Rudolph. Because now potential and pedigree are what really matter. And so to me, you got to go with Mason Rudolph.
All right. They won't tell you probably until it's the list of the actives and inactives come out on Sunday in Cleveland. Now, let's switch to something else because I realize that's the hot button and we'll continue. We could be here all night talking about that. I want to talk about Le'Veon Bell because Le'Veon Bell did not go out of his way to endorse a tweet that came out. I believe Jerry Dulac and others had players in the locker room saying, Will Graves, that he's going to be in on Monday, much like what we saw last year. He came out on Twitter and says, fake news, ain't going to happen. I've heard that he may not. Hypothetically, if he does not show up tomorrow, what happens next?
Then we wait till Wednesday, right?
And you don't think that's a problem for this team?
I think it is a problem. I think Le'Veon, though, has also approached this differently than he did last year. Last year, he made it a point on social media. Here's how hard I'm working out. Here's how I'm getting ready for the season. Here's what I'm doing. Now all he's doing is dropping his rap songs and doing Instagram stories of his daughter. So he's taken a different tact and stayed more in the dark about his approach. I think he needs to get in if he wants to show that he can be trusted. I think he needs to be in tomorrow. But I still think 80% of Le'Veon Bell is better than 100% of James Conner. So if he shows up Wednesday, Le'Veon's the starter.
If he shows up this week, he's the starter, and he will show up this week because I don't think he's just going to keep forfeiting $850,000 game checks. Certainly, I hope he's not listening to James Harrison, one of the worst advisors you could possibly take any kind of pointers from at this point. I think the guy wants to make money. He knows he has to play and play very well to have a chance at making the kind of big money he wants in the offseason. So whether it's tomorrow, or Wednesday, he's going to be there and he's going to be playing. I'll even put myself out there, Will, like you did with the backup quarterback tweet. I'll be shocked, and you can make fun of me and screen cap my face if Le'Veon Bell doesn't show.
I hope he listens to James Harrison. He should. Why not? If I was him, I would not be in until about week 6 or 7. That would be what I would do. I would not allow the Steelers to run my legs off. And that $850,000, if I do what I'm supposed to do, you know what? I'm going to recoup it in the form of a large guarantee for a very big contract. So to me, you know what? The $4 million or whatever I would forfeit over 6 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever it is, I would sit out and I would not play the first 5, 6, 7
So you
games.
agree with Harrison? Don't come in. This is a business. Yeah. Wait till week 10.
I would. Hey, look, to me, I would. If I don't know what the incentive for him to come in is. What is the incentive other than making $800,000, which to you and me and everybody else, well, maybe not Chris, but for all of the rest of us, $800,000 is a lot.
That's a week.
And it's a lot of money. But to Le'Veon Bell and what he's probably going to make on the open market, it's not really that much of an incentive for him to come in.
We're going to carry this over to the next segment, okay? Because I think that's a good point. We also have some other stuff, so we'll do that. But we have other stuff coming up, and I want to remind you, in sports, a player's first hit, goal, or touchdown is celebrated in a big way. Number 1 Cochran now has a new first. They've opened up their first ever Toyota store and are celebrating with a huge grand opening sales event. You can get special offers on all Toyotas, plus an extra $1,000 over Kelley Blue Book value for your trade. The new number 1 Cochran Toyota, formerly Bob Massey Toyota, in Route 30, North Huntington. Check it out or visit CochranToyota.com. Steeler Conversation continues into segment 2 next. Number 1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by Number 1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.